Ah, the SML Timeline. Surely this will be an easy thing to piece together. Okay, you know that isn't true. Sure, this isn't the most difficult thing ever, but clearly there are some difficulties, which is why I'm making this video. There will be what I call rules for this timeline, which will explain abnormalities or other continuity issues to the best of my ability. Of course, some of these will be easier to solve than others. So without further ado, let's begin. So let's just start by going from the beginning up till the very end, and I'll explain rules to be added as we go along. Now, I was going to start this off by saying how simple the beginning of this timeline is, but no, it really isn't. In fact, how this timeline works is actually rather annoying. Sure, the old era we can pretty much put into one straight line, but let's talk about Mario and Luigi's Stupid and Dumb Adventures. The timeline is messed up a bit, in part due to Logan himself having to re-upload these videos back in 2009, so if we were to go with those dates, that would make the timeline look a bit strange, but for the original dates, things are mostly intact. However, from time to time, we get the odd video just sort of interrupting things, such as Luigi's Secret. So while we could easily say that the non-Mario and Luigi Stupid and Dumb Adventures videos take place at a different time, there's also stuff like how Mario and Luigi Stupid and Dumb Adventures will also reference things like the Rock Band review. And then of course we have old era style things seemingly done just for fun. But wait, is it? Mario did canonically work at Burger King for a time. So let's do this with the timeline. The old era goes in chronological order, that's simple. Then we have the Rock Band review, which acts as a sort of episode 0 to Mario and Luigi's Stupid and Dumb Adventures. Next we have the shorts, which took place before Mario and Luigi's Stupid and Dumb Adventures began, although alternatively I suppose you could say that a loosely defined to be continued, such as the end of episode 5, could make it so that Mario and Mama Luigi just got really distracted for a while, although even then that's sort of pushing it. I'll also count the new ShamWow as a sort of interseasonal short. Otherwise, Mario and Luigi's Stupid and Dumb Adventures takes place in chronological order. Of course, even this wouldn't last long as we get into Season 2. In Season 2, the timeline forgoes all semblance of being somewhat connected and just splits entirely into two separate things. Because yeah, I'm sorry, the timeline simply diverged so much, and each Mario and Luigi's Stupid and Dumb Adventures episode takes place one after the other, that there's no hope of me piecing these back together even if I wanted to. The only reason I even tried that for Season 1 was because Mom Luigi was in these shorts, and this was before that time where he, well, died. But from Season 2 Episode 3 going forward, the timeline will split between Mario and Luigi's Stupid and Dumb Adventures and, well, basically everything else. Let's quickly cover Season 2, which is rather simple since each episode takes place one after the other, and has a satisfying ending of Mario going back in time to have the entire series loop over again. Very straightforward, especially with the SML movies and shorts on a different timeline now. I sure hope there isn't a third season or something to mess up the order of everything. Uh-oh, it looks like my giant stupid plot hole alarm is going off. Yeah, alright, let's talk about Season 3. Season 3 of Mario and Luigi's Stupid and Dumb Adventures was an unneeded reboot before those were cool, and everyone does reboots now, like seriously why? So at the end of Season 2, the timeline actually splits. One is the timeline where Mario properly goes back in time, as the ending intended and also heavily implies, while the other one is where Mario goes to an alternate dimension. This leads to a couple of problems though. So this takes place immediately after the events of Season 2, right? And Season 2 takes place in one giant line. So basically anything that hadn't happened in that Season 2 timeline should be considered non-canon, since Mario would have no idea about it. And that's why this supposed continuation is so frustrating. So Mario's in a dimension which is notably different from the SML movie timeline, being an inversion of that. However, the frustrating part is that Mario and Luigi's Stupid and Dumb Adventures Mario acknowledges things he should have literally no idea about. Sure, some of them are good and even make sense, such as Shrek not liking cheesecake being something that confuses Mario. But then we have things such as Mario knowing about Charlie and friends, with the first time we saw it not happening until Bowser's Biggest Fear. Or maybe if you want, you can count the Bowser Juice infomercial, since that features Charles, so maybe that's like a celebrity cameo type of bit. But okay, maybe Charlie is a big deal in the SML universe in general, and it's been running for ages. Fine, I can let that one go. But then we have Mario knowing about Chef Pee Pee, which is also definitely pushing it since Chef Pee Pee wasn't seen in videos until when Season 2 was already going. But again, maybe we can argue that Chef Pee Pee has been there a long time and we just never happened to see him. But then we get Toad. If I could ever possibly give any points to the first couple of errors here, that all flies out the window with Toad, who's a rapper. The problem is that Toad only became a rapper during the video Toad is Cool, which was again well into when Mario and Luigi's Stupid and Dumb Adventure Season 2 was taking place on a different timeline, and there was zero indication in all of Season 2 that Toad was a rapper. Again, this whole episode serves as one giant plot hole. But fine, let me see if I can fix this. Okay, so the portal also gave Mario some of the memories that he would have had if he existed in the SML movie timeline. Not much, which is why he doesn't instantly have a ton of confusion with his new memories, but just enough to know that some things are different. Yeah, that's the best I can give you to fix that plot hole. Luckily, the rest of the season is a straight line up until episode 3, where we run into another problem. The season was never finished, at least not officially, so we get two timelines going forward. The fan theory that every SML video going forward featuring Mario actually takes place either in an alternate dimension each time, or in a more practical scenario, Mario traveled to dimensions until he found the one he's in now, and just decided it was decent enough. Basically, think of the ending to the Time and Punishment segment from The Simpsons Treehouse of Horror 5. The other timeline is the one I actually decided to go with, and we'll discuss later on in the video. Of course, the final option here is that you can simply consider Season 3 non-canon entirely. That certainly isn't a bad idea, and actually rather understandable, but that might be reconsidered once we get later on into the timeline. Now then, let's move back onto the SML movie timeline. This features basically every other non-Mario and Luigi's Stupid and Dumb Adventures video. This is fairly straightforward actually, but there are some branching paths I want to mention, as well as some of those rules I'd like to mention. Since SML is such an episodic series, you can more or less go in any order you want, although I'll add a couple rules here. Let's start with the rule of key videos. As in, if there's a key video where a character is added, a location changes, a birthday happens, or what have you, any videos featuring that change must come after that video. So new house videos aren't going on while in the old house, or Jeffy videos aren't randomly in the middle of the junior era, and so on. Also, yeah, the eras apply in this timeline too, in case that wasn't painfully obvious by this point. I'll also add the rule of reference to this, so if a character is referencing a previous video, then yeah, that video obviously comes after the previous one. Next, you'll from time to time get a video where a character dies, but then suddenly they're fine in later videos. Well, that's where the Craig rule comes in. Since Craig can canonically revive characters, that's simply what happens, and he does it simply because he's a nice guy. Alternatively, we see that hell has an exit door, so we can just use that as well. Alright, now that we have those rules out of the way, let's start on the series. Mario and Bowser's Stupid and Crazy Adventure takes place in a straight line with no deviations, luckily making this one of the easier series to deal with. It branches off in timeline order. Black Yoshi and the Birds takes place more or less in a straight line, although there are videos featuring the birds interspersed in there. Unfortunately, the to be continued moments in this series don't leave a lot of room for where the other videos would have taken place. However, episode 3 leaves a decent opening, so what we'll say is that all the other videos with the Angry Birds took place between episodes 3 and 4 of Black Yoshi and the Birds. Yeah, that'll do. However, there is an exception to this rule in the form of Replacement Egg, which actually takes place in the middle of episode 6. You might also be wondering how the Valentine's Day video works, since not only was it released before Toad and Tony were an established thing in episode 4, but it also takes place before Chad was even introduced. Well, we'll just sort of insert that into episode 6 as well. Since the episodes take place back to back, we can just say that nearly everything that didn't take place between episodes 3 and 4 took place during the break in episode 6. Luigi's Mansion. So Luigi's Mansion is a bit of a mess, but I think we can make it work. The Luigi's Mansion series takes place at night, so we'll say this is a continuous line that all takes place over the course of a single night with one exception, and that night is a full moon, which is what caused all of this. In episode 7, Luigi dies, and while he's in hell, he actually spends a long time there, even if it doesn't feel like it. He returns to what's actually an abandoned house, enters a mouse hole which takes him to the apartment on another full moon, and he ends the series by getting the remaining ghosts, although this doesn't happen on screen. Mind you, Luigi's efforts don't really matter because, as it turns out, everyone's fine even without his intervention. Finally, Luigi returns one more time as a ghost hunter in Ghost Jeffy. Chef Pee-Pee Quits. Chef Pee-Pee Quits is another odd series. So in the SML videos normally, Chef Pee-Pee was still there, but then there was a series where Chef Pee-Pee decided to quit, hence the title of the series. So how does that work? Well, the first 4 Chef Pee-Pee Quits videos happen in a line over the course of a couple days. Chef Pee-Pee then decides to return after what happened in part 4. He leaves again in part 5 before quickly returning. Chef Pee-Pee leaves again in part 6, only to realize that Freddy Fazbear's Pizza is burned down, and then he returns again after the end of part 6. The Summer School series takes place in a continuous line over the course of 7 school days. Bowser Jr.'s Summer Vacation also takes place immediately afterwards. Any videos featuring Jr. in between the Summer School videos took place over the weekend. The Pokemon series takes place in a straight line, with one exception. Parts 1 through 5 take place all in a straight line, before it merges back with the regular SML timeline, where Junior stops looking for a Poliwhirl for a while, until searching again shortly after Jeffy is introduced into videos. Now, one could say this shouldn't count because the apartment is in here, but no, that's just another Pokemon Center. As for why we don't see Pokemon outside of this series, this is a sort of pretend thing where they're playing the card game, but to Junior it's all real. Alright, that's the series videos covered. Oh, wait a minute, what about Baby Shrek? Yeah, there's sort of an irony that Baby Shrek is one giant hole in the timeline, since it fast forwards to when Baby Shrek is going to college. This isn't just a skip forward of a couple hours, or a month, or even a year. And 18 years after Baby Shrek would be 2029, and I don't think the characters would be in that house in 2029. This is actually 18 ogre years later. The font is in green, and as we all know, ogres age at a faster rate during their formative years, much like an onion.
I'm an ogre, you know, like an onion and cake, we have layers. You've seen the movie.
No.
However, we still have 3 other big outliers, one of which being The Perfect Plan. Where does that fit in? Well, honestly, it's so different that I don't think it can really fit in anywhere. It can't be fit into an established timeline, so instead we'll call this a performance that was put on for the regular SML characters. Think of it like the Umber Island Players episode from Avatar. In the timeline it takes place, well, basically at any point in the apartment. The next outlier is Schizophrenia Case Study, the Super Luigi Logan video that Logan said wasn't canon. But honestly, I want to call it canon because I really liked the video. This is actually fairly simple to do, but we need to figure out how Maria Gonzalez and Felipe got into the house. Well, they broke in. Normally they live in the bushes like Joseph used to, but they managed to break in twice and somehow just not get caught. Look, I just want this video to be canon, okay? Finally, we have the Toad's Mistake 2017 remake. This video is actually a look into an alternate dimension again, this time where Mom Luigi didn't die. Also as a bonus, I know Mom Luigi shows up in the Big Thanksgiving, and this is just him visiting from heaven. Alternatively, you could consider Toad's Mistake 2017 to be Mom Luigi visiting from heaven. And now we're on towards the end of the timeline. Well, there really wasn't any avoiding this one, but let's talk about the puppets, and what happened to SML going forward. The Puppet Bridge, as I call it, bridges together the plush and puppet videos. This is mainly seen in the Human Potion. Okay, cool, that solves continuity problems, right? Well, not exactly. In short, this will begin the whole question of what continuity is canon in SML, such as in creation, in practical effect, which series have been dumped to the wayside, etc. The timeline split. Because hey, apparently SML of all things needed a split, right? So how does that work? Well, there are two main branches of this split, what I'll call Technical SML and Extended SML. Technical SML is the one run by Logan. This is technically SML because Logan's running it complete with any positives or negatives that entails. But the plushes are gone, none of the plush series will ever be finished, thus stranding them in limbo, and at times the technical version feels less like SML than some of the ones from the other side of the split. Compound this with SML's general decline in quality, and this effectively continues SML in name alone. You aren't really getting the plush versions of these characters, you're getting their horrific alterations pretending to be them, complete with some of the personality changes that the characters have gone through since the Switch, which at times can lead people to wonder if it's even the same character. It also leaves a lot of things simply unanswered, which Logan will never be able to answer even if he wanted to, since Logan can't acknowledge basically any of his old videos. The other branch is Extended SML. Now, depending on who you ask, this is one continuous line unified by the fact that it's spiritually continuing SML in a sense, or you can consider it multiple different branches. This branch has one thing in common: continuing or making adaptations to SML as it was before the split. I'll name the three big examples, although admittedly there are likely more. We'll begin with the most direct continuation, that being My Own. Mine takes over as the puppets became permanent, as well as being a direct finale to Mario & Luigi's Stupid and Dumb Adventure Season 3, since Logan never bothered to finish that. It also brings in Black Yoshi's Family, another promised series which never came to be during Logan's original branch. This whole branch acts as a direct continuation from Logan's, as it acknowledges the events of what happened in the original. The other versions are a bit more indirect. Mathdominus' Super Mario Logan movie takes place with SML in mind, but is more like a separate universe or dimension. Meanwhile, his Mario & Luigi's Stupid and Dumb Adventures remake is, well, just that. A remake of the original season of Mario & Luigi's Stupid and Dumb Adventures, with a couple bonus things in there. We'll say that this takes place in an alternate dimension which will eventually merge with the original. Then there's SML The Grieving, a completely different universe entirely, which begins shortly after Jeffy's 18th birthday. The event, not the video. But where do these videos intersect? Well, there are two theories that can be placed here: the indirect canon theory and a direct quasi-canon theory. Yeah, needless to say, neither of these will be fully satisfactory to some. The indirect canon theory is that the events after Mario & Luigi's Stupid and Dumb Adventures Season 3 Episode 3 are all just Mario traveling across dimensions. The reason I say this is indirect is because it's never stated and at times doesn't make sense, since sometimes characters will acknowledge previous videos but other times they don't. While I like this theory, not only does Season 3 still mess with the timeline in ways I'm not really a fan of, but it leaves a lot of holes in there. So the direct quasi-canon theory is up next. The events of Mario & Luigi's Stupid and Dumb Adventures and later SML videos at some point deviate, thus explaining why Mario & Luigi's Stupid and Dumb Adventures Season 3 is just never acknowledged again. But eventually, Mario is brought back into the future, where his memories of the two timelines are merged, he's brought up to speed with what happened, and he is given the ability to go back in time or to different dimensions as he wishes, opening up a theoretically infinite amount of timelines where Mario opts to make one decision or another. You could even argue that one of those decisions is going back to the technical SML timeline, you know, in case he wanted to be unhappy. Well hey, this doesn't sound like too bad of a theory. It cleans things up in a fairly neat manner, and it's all fairly direct, without having to lean too heavily into assumptions. So, what's the catch? Well, the catch is that this timeline revolves around whether or not you believe Mario & Luigi's Stupid and Dumb Adventures Season 3 Episode 4, which I made, to be canon. If you don't, then you have the indirect canon mess on your hands. But who decides this anyway? Well, Logan, right? No. Everything since before the cease and desist, Logan basically isn't allowed to acknowledge anymore. So for all intents and purposes, everything before then exists in a sort of limbo. Sure, the things we mentioned earlier in this video are pretty concrete, but once you get to where it goes after the cease and desist, that's up to more interpretation. In fact, ultimately, it's up to your interpretation at the end of the day. There is, of course, one other option, that being the unknown SML timeline. This timeline branches off of either Season 3 Episode 4, or can just be jumped straight into from the last Plush SML video. Basically, this means that the Plush SML dimension or canon continued, but just not documented by means of an actual SML video. Oh yeah, also this is where other fan dimensions or timelines could go, and these are all theoretically possible because now Mario can go wherever he wants. That means he could go to another fan timeline, or even just back to the Plush timeline, even if no more videos are ever made. And like I said before, to many people, none of these will be completely satisfactory. So yeah, that's basically it for the timeline. Yeah, quite the sudden conclusion, huh? Well, that's because, ironically enough, there isn't anything conclusive, nor can there ever really be. Some might see this as annoying due to the lack of conclusion, but others might see this as a blessing, as it grants a lot of freedom to interpretation. And that is the blessing and curse of the SML timeline. And before we go, let's talk about the remakes. None of them are canon. Literally none of them. Why? Well, first of all, the remakes are at best usually just worse versions of the original videos, and second of all, and arguably most importantly, the fact that certain things build off of the idea that certain things took place in their original videos. Let's take Jeffy as, well, an entire character actually. The moment you start moving his introduction location and time around, that causes a huge mess which we're not dealing with, especially since SML still builds off of the original videos and not the remakes anyway. So, in short, the remakes aren't canon. I'm sorry to the two people out there that prefer the remakes for some reason. Well, that's the SML timeline. It's a bit of a mess to say the least, but let me know what all of you think, and let me know if you believe there's anything I missed. That's all for now, though. Thank y'all for watching, and take care.